like that. But as far as I say, as far as it was known, the main function was reconnaissance, keeping track of forces hostile to the South African Defence Force.
Bushfighting required strong conventional forces providing support. The South African Navy and Air Force kept an eye on enemy arms shipments with aging yet still serviceable Shackleton reconnaissance aircraft. Mirage and Impala jets flew interdiction missions. Troop transport was provided by Puma helicopters and the veteran Dakota. It remains a workhorse of the SAAF. The South Africans' high level of training, success on the battlefield, and strong logistical base could not stop the tide of change sweeping the world. The Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Empire began collapsing. South Africa resisted full democracy. It became almost totally isolated. In the early 1990s, the situation radically altered. The release of the ANC leader Nelson Mandela from prison and subsequent negotiations leading to the all-race elections meant the end of the old South Africa. But the role of the defense forces was never more critical. As the country lurched towards majority rule, the security situation in the townships deteriorated. The police were neither trained nor properly equipped to maintain peace. Rivalry between ANC supporters and Inkatha Freedom Party members threatened to bring South Africa to the point of anarchy. The army was deployed, restoring a degree of order. The South African Defence Forces found a role that they could be proud of.
It's rewarding being in the township for the simple reason that since we've been here, there's a vast improvement in the attitudes of the people, if I can put it that way, but in their whole way of life. Whereas before people were scared to come out and walk around in the townships freely, we're now finding that the people are opening up markets like we've sort of seen recently. People are free to walk around and express themselves a lot better. Obviously there's still a lot of violence going on, and this is probably due not to political reasons, but probably more due to just violent elements within the townships. And obviously the South African Defence Force then has to identify these people and take the necessary steps to remove them from the thing, obviously through the normal channels.
This job is not without risk. There is an ongoing threat to both civilian and soldier.
Obviously, we train soldiers. We take every precaution that we possibly can to ensure that there's no loss of life from our point of view. There are people that are killed in the townships through violence, but really our troops walk around in the streets, obviously armed. But the idea is to walk around and meet with the people, talk to them, find out what their problems are, which problems we then take to our higher authorities and see what we can best do to solve those problems. But really I don't think anybody really fears for their lives walking in the streets. If we did, we'd be walking around in flak jackets and riding around in armoured vehicles. The idea is really to get on the ground and show the people that we're part of them, that we actually live in the township with them. We don't sort of come into the township and do our job and move out again. And obviously the people then can identify us with us a lot better because of the simple fact that we are part of them, we understand what they're going through.
While service in the townships may be a rewarding exercise in winning the hearts and minds, it requires discipline and nerve. There are hundreds of weapons concealed within the sprawling shacks and hostels. These men find the most effective means of keeping the peace is going on patrol on foot, but it is dangerous duty.
Oh, when you start out at first, it's like any job. You're scared. You're wondering what's going to happen next. Are you going to be shot? But after a while, you get used to the idea. But it's still stuck in the back of your mind. You know what can happen next to you, because there's no telling. Might this be the day? This up front is also called the buffer zone, because it acts as a buffer between Thokoza and Katlehong, the violent sections, the war zones. There's a belt of violence where the people have clashes of opinions, so they shoot from both sides. And if we go down the road there as well, you'll see there's actually no cars moving, say, after dark. You won't pick up any movement there. The houses now, as you can see, is a lot more deserted, more burned down, a lot of destruction around.
While the problems in the townships have captured the attention of the world, the defense forces have found themselves serving over a widespread area. Just weeks before the election, local authorities lost control in Mbatho, capital of Bophuthatswana, one of the so-called independent homelands established by the South African government to maintain apartheid. Armed radical white supremacists moved in to take over. There were shootings and deaths. The specter of civil war loomed. The army was ready. They moved in to restore order and protect blacks and whites from further violence. Brigadier Coetzee, who commanded the operation, describes the sequence of events that fateful week.
We started placing some of the forces on standby, and then on Tuesday we had an exercise here. Some of the forces remained behind because of the possible threat, and these forces were also placed under my command. We also at that stage came under a standby of 6 hours. From there on, we managed the standby time in my command, Northwestern Command, and on 12 o'clock on Thursday evening, we were on a 1 hour standby. The first phase of my mission was to move to the embassy. I had to have 5 companies in position there, and I had to protect the interests of South Africa. But I didn't have the permission to move out of the embassy. In the meantime, discussions took place between General Meyer, Chief of the South African Defence Force, and General Turner, Chief of the Bophuthatswana Defence Force. And General Turner, on grounds of agreement of aid, asked that the South African forces assist in stabilizing the situation in Bophuthatswana. At 1600 hours, I received the instructions, and we moved out into Mbatho. And I think that we gained control that evening, and by the following morning, we could say that we were in complete control of the situation. We fired 1 shot in this whole operation, and that was wounding Luther. So in actual fact, we succeeded in stabilizing the area without actually using the force potential that were available to us.
While able to react quickly to crises similar to Bophuthatswana, other missions are more stationary but just as dangerous. What began as counterinsurgency operations to protect South Africa's borders from terrorists has become an effort to control incursions by economic refugees, cattle thieves, and gun runners. This patrol is assigned to the fence along the Mozambique frontier. During the height of South Africa's border campaigns, the fence was charged with lethal doses of electricity. Now it serves to monitor illicit border movements.
We can state this fence or put this fence on different systems. The first one is the alarm system, where it is not deadly, and we can only use it as an alarm to electorate or to warn our people placed at Macadamia Base to react wherever there is an incursion on our fence. Secondly, it can be put on deadly, the deadly mode, and that is when you touch the fence, it will be fatal. At the moment, the fence is on the alarm mode. Now, why we are considering to put this fence on the deadly mode is as a result of the influx of weapons into our country. We are convinced that there are 2 systems. The one is the organized smuggling network that goes on from Mozambique into the RSA. And this is an organized network where it is specifically organized that weapons are carried, well, once again, I must repeat the word, in an organized manner through the border to South Africa. And the second system is just that I'm convinced also that individuals smuggle weapons for their own personal interest, because where there is weapons involved or where there are weapons involved, there's also money involved, and they do this for personal concern.
The sophisticated equipment used by the Army to oversee the border has been produced by what has become Africa's most advanced arms and technology industry. Armscor has been privatized into companies such as Denel. These organizations, in a period of more than 2 decades of continuous warfare, have developed, produced, tested, and used in battle a comprehensive range of weapon systems. The experience gained in these years of deploying relatively small mobile forces over a very large and varied terrain, including deserts, swamps, bush, and hills, have resulted in the opportunity to develop weapons that are particularly well suited for limited war and peacekeeping operations. Among the uniquely South Africa-designed and produced defense systems are the Rooivalk combat helicopter. It was designed for close air support of ground forces. The twin-engine aircraft has advanced electronics features and turret-mounted cannon under the nose. The Rooikat is a fast, highly mobile, 8-wheeled armored fighting vehicle. It was designed specifically for fighting in the demanding and tough African terrain. The SPOG self-propelled anti-aircraft gun was designed for fast-moving warfare. It too has advanced electronics weapons control for its 35mm guns. The G6 self-propelled 155mm cannon is capable of speeds in excess of 50 miles per hour. It is designed to support mechanized infantry and armored forces at division strength. It is capable of being fired within 60 seconds after arriving on location and can depart within 30 seconds of firing its last shot. The 7.62mm SS-77 multiple-use machine gun can be used in a wide range of functions, from mobile infantry support to sustained firing from shipboard or armored vehicle mountings. The R4 assault rifle is the core weapon of the Army. It is lightweight and rugged. It is designed to be used by infantry in open ground or carried within the confines of armored vehicles. Regardless of the ethical and political legacy of the South African Defense Forces, it has earned respect among the world's professional military.
I would rate it probably near the top of the league of the minor powers from battle experience and equipment and gaining expertise. Especially in the African terrain, I would rate it very highly. It would be very difficult to fight even with a modern regular army, because most regular armies prefer continuous fronts, and very few have ever had experience of operating where your enemy is dispersed, and you, in fact, every time you come to a halt, you have to prepare for all-round defense. And this has been a sort of a tradition in South African warfare, is that you do not have continuous fronts, that you can probably find a gap in the line and come round the enemy's rear. So there has been a tradition of mobile warfare, not in the same sense as blitzkrieg, but certainly going for the gaps, trying to force your enemy from positions rather than indulging in bloody frontal battles, winning by maneuver, in the same way that I would say that Eastern forces, and I talk about Japan and China, in various theatres of operations have used ridge lines or jungles to hook round and cut off a Western style army dependent on lorries and so on from its base by cutting off the road behind it and setting up roadblocks. South African forces have never been vulnerable in the same way, because with the use of wheeled vehicles, South Africa tends to cut loose from the roads in the same way, using wheeled vehicles, and is not as vulnerable to that type of tactic, and similarly can employ the similar tactics against road-bound opponents. The uniqueness to South Africa, the South African Defence Force, is really the marrying of, yes, an imperial tradition of assault and a local mounted rifleman tradition. But in fact, to use the term in its correct sense, the native South African military tradition is that of the mounted rifleman. So there is a mobile tradition with the mounted rifleman, with the ability to move long distances with a minimum logistic tail, And that tradition, in fact, has grown up almost in the blood of anybody in the South African military. And that is more the tradition that it's a homegrown tradition which goes back something like 200-300 years.
These men are recruits in the new South African Army. They bring with them a spirit that will ultimately transform the SADF. Officers say the Army has changed before and been better for it. They believe that will happen again. The officers of the old South African Defence Force are ready to bring these men up to the standards they expect of any recruit, regardless of race.
You see, training is training, whether it's a voluntary service member or under the old system. It's actually you're working with recruits and you've got to train them, so training is all alike. We are here to stay. We train people to be soldiers. We train them to be technical personnel within the Army and outside. And we'll keep on doing that.
And this is an intense course, with the men mastering the basics that every soldier in the world must master, keeping in good shape, learning how to march, and most importantly, how to shoot. These essential elements are taught by non-commissioned officers who saw long service in Angola, Southwest Africa, and more recently in the townships. They pass on to the recruits their long years of combat experience. There are many more blacks than whites in this new army. It will undoubtedly change the character of the military. The long-repressed warrior spirit of the Africans themselves will finally be free to emerge again. And it is a daunting tradition that is being unleashed.
The word Zulu, in a military sense, is a disciplined, almost ferocious military force with a go-ahead attack, aggressive military rush. One of the few military systems which has based its success on closing with the enemy on decisive battle. I think the Zulu military tradition, like that of the ancient Greeks, was based on decisive battle. You finish the horror in a day, not the prolonged agony that we now know of from Vietnam, Angola, Cambodia. I think that tradition is the Zulu tradition, is that in fact it has many, one reason why the Zulu is identifiable in a Western sense is the same identification with decisive battle, that you end the agony in a day.
The men who will help lead this new army are not afraid. They are extremely proud of what they consider their high degree of professionalism. They intend to serve the new government with understanding and resolve.
I think it is normal for any person going into a big change to be a bit unsure. And I think all the individuals in South Africa are a bit unsure of their immediate future. But in large, the message I would like to send through is that I am convinced that we are going into a very bright future. I am sure that our army at the moment is a bit too big, but once the army has been reduced to its real size and it does the job that they are really that they really want to do and must do according to basics and according to tradition all over the world. I'm sure that we are going into a very nice, solid army of the future in South Africa, and it will be an army from the people, for the people, accepted by all the people, and it will be as pleasant as always to be in the South African National Army.
This army will include elements of all the forces that have fought in the country for the past 20 years, guerrilla and regular alike. One of the most famous of these units is the 44 Parachute Brigade, the Para-Bats. Officially formed in the early 60s, they emerged from the legacy of the British Parachute Regiment. The Para-Bats were among the units deployed to Bophuthatswana during the recent Troubles. They are considered one of the most elite parachute units in the world. Today, they form the core of what could constitute South Africa's contribution to multinational military operations. These men bring intense pride and hard-earned experience to the new South African Army. Commanders realize that there will be immense pressures in the future. The military can serve as internal peacekeepers when disputes between factions threaten to erupt into violence. The Army, so hated by blacks in the past, may well be what keeps South Africa together in the future.